announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, cover it all here. The Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, the Washington Commanders snapped their 3-game skid with a 24-16 win over the Atlanta Falcons, getting back in the win column, evening up their record at 3-3, and giving themselves a chance to fight in the NFC East that is all of a sudden wide open with the Eagles losing to the New York Jets. Dallas game pending tonight. And again, Eagles schedule getting a lot tougher. Opportunities for Washington, got to take advantage. And we'll see what happens with Dallas. You know, we can't really worry about what everyone else is doing. I've always told you guys, we just need to focus at the task at hand, which is what we have to do. If we take care of what we have to take care of, everything else will take care of itself. So this was a huge win for Ron and his gang because they were under heavy scrutiny after the Bears game, and deservingly so. This doesn't wipe away the stink from the Bears game, but it is a step in the right direction in trying to do that and make something of this season. So let's talk about some of the things that led to the victory for Washington, 24-16. This is the best start Washington has had under Ron Rivera in 4 years, which in itself talks about the slow starts that we've been harping on for the last 2 to 3 years. But this was one of the best all-around team performances when you talk about complementary football that we've seen from this team. Now, offense could have done a little bit more, right? Offense could have done a lot more, if we're being honest. But it was still a 3-phase victory. And that's something that we don't often say here with this team. So if they can somehow bottle this up and continue to use this formula with maybe a little bit more being chipped in from the offense, this team will be tough to beat on a weekly basis. That said, a lot of things to clean up, but this was a really good step in the right direction. And now you got an opportunity to maybe build a little bit of momentum, go to New York. That's a struggling football team. They showed life last night, even though they didn't win. See what you can get done and see if you can't get over 500 and maybe start to really give yourself a chance. But let's talk about the keys to the game that we laid out for the team on Friday during the game plan. And this was as clean of a game plan and in terms of execution as you're going to find, for me at least. So the first key offensively was don't turn it over. I left no room for error, no margin for error. I made it very clear and concise. I don't want to see a turnover from us. When we've played our best football this season, we've protected the ball. And somebody pointed something out to me that hadn't dawned on me to this point. We've played 3 road games this season, 3 home games. We haven't turned it over on the road yet this season. We didn't turn it over against Denver. We didn't turn it over against Philadelphia. We didn't turn it over against the Falcons. All of our turnovers have come at home. We've been awful at home, if we're being honest. And it's a continuation of FedEx Field just being a house of horrors for us. We haven't protected home. It hasn't been home field advantage for us. And even though the fans are coming back and it's more of an advantage than it has been in the last 10 to 12 years, still, the end result is we just haven't played well at home for whatever reason. That said, eventually I'd like to think that tide will turn, but we have to continue to play clean football on the road where it's even tougher to win. And we've done that to this point of the season. And we did it again on Sunday, and that's a huge part of the reason why we won. Had we just turned it over once, we might not win the football game. We forced 3 turnovers, and we still needed a late interception, really on the last 2 possessions, to preserve the victory. So that tells you that we still have a long way to go. When you generate that many turnovers, don't give it away yourself, and all you have to show for it is an 8-point victory. There should have been more on the part of scoring by Washington to really put this game out of reach. And we shouldn't be talking about a one-score victory, but we'll take them any way we can get them. And part of the reason we were able to come away victorious is because we did not turn the football over. So obviously a full point there. Get into an early rhythm offensively. I thought we did that. Yeah, we moved it on the first possession. Like always, we have something destructive happen, a penalty or sack. This time it was a sack that killed us on the first drive. It really distorted down and distance, and we weren't able to recover and had to settle for a Joy Slye field goal. That said, you still put up points on the first possession. You still got into a rhythm early, and I thought that set the tone for what was going to ultimately be a very successful first half with the Crowder punt return. You were able, because you got into an early rhythm offensively, you were able to then quickly turn that punt return into 7 points, right? You were able to drive it down again later on in the second quarter, score another touchdown, make it 17, right? Then Kendall Fuller provides you with a pick in the second half, at very first possession of the second half, and you quickly turn that into another 7 points. And so because you got into a rhythm early, I thought you were able to then take advantage of opportunities when they presented themselves. And so I think it is very important that this team start fast, get into an early rhythm. They did that offensively. They got a full point for that. Convert on third downs and in the red zone. So we weren't very efficient on third downs. Obviously, the second half was a house of horrors on third down. We didn't convert I don't think we converted a single third down in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously that was not what you were looking for. I think we were something like 4 of 14, 3 of 14, something to that effect on third downs. We weren't very good in the game. But we were 2 of 3 in the red zone. And that was, one of the big reasons why we were able to win this game. We scored 3 touchdowns. The Falcons only scored 2. All right. So when you take care of business like that, it gives you a chance to win. They got a half a point there. Didn't convert on third downs the way we would have liked to, but we did, however, find ourselves being somewhat efficient in the red zone. So half a point there. Last offensive key was hit on at least 2 big chunk plays in the game. And for me, chunk plays, big chunk plays, not just regular chunk plays. Big chunks are 25, a quarter of the field or more. So technically, offensively, we didn't have any. But we had the 24-yard Brian Robinson screen touchdown, which I'm going to count that as a big chunk play. It was a huge play in the game. And Jamison Crowder, special teams return, that's something that you just don't count on happening. And I know special teams is its own entity, and it's more closely related to defense than it is offense. But I'm going to count that Crowder punt return as a chunk play as well. It was 61 yards. It was huge. To me, it was the play that really jump-started the football team offensively. So I'm going to count that one as the second one, and I'm going to say that they achieved that goal. So I'm going to give them full credit for that. Those were huge plays in the game, both of them. And they both either directly or indirectly led to touchdowns in the ball game. So there is that. And there was another opportunity for one. Obviously, Jahan Dotson had a drop. I think it would have been gone for a touchdown. But that's nor here nor there. Full credit for that. So we move on to the defense. The first key was the biggest one, which was you got to limit Bijan Robinson. Their offense goes as he goes. Bijan Robinson had 18 touches for 80 yards in this game. They limited him to less than 3 yards a carry. 13 carries, 38 yards. He had, I think it was 38 yards, something to that effect. Might have been like 34. He had 5 catches for like 46 yards or something like that. So really didn't hurt us there either. All in all, if I were to tell you before the game that Bijan Robinson would have nearly 20 touches and would average just slightly over 4 yards per touch, you would have taken that because that probably means we were going to win the game. And that's what happened. Ineffective on the ground and largely ineffective as a pass catcher. So hats off to the staff, Jack and company of, unlike the week prior when DJ Moore should have been your focal point, hats off to the staff for singling out their most important player and daring somebody else to beat us. Drake London tried, but he couldn't do it. He's not Bijan Robinson. Drake London had a hell of a day. I'll take my chances with Drake London hurting me versus Bijan Robinson. That should have been the method of attack last week against DJ Moore. I'll try my hand at having Darnell Mooney or Equinemius St. Brown or somebody else beating me, not DJ Moore. But good for them, taking away Bijan Robinson, essentially. Full point there. Contain Desmond Ridder and sack him was the next key to the game defensively. Obviously, they did that. They sacked Ridder 3 times. Limit him as a runner. He was largely ineffective in that department, and that's not something that we should take lightly because mobile quarterbacks usually give us fits. He wasn't able to escape the pocket. He wasn't able to extend. Casey Toohill did a fantastic job of staying at home on the backside of Boots and really tracking him down. You saw Casey Toohill's speed really on full display because Ridder could not outrun him. He couldn't outflank him, and Toohill was really closing that distance. There was some closing speed by Casey Toohill on a number of those plays, including the sack that he had of Ridder on a critical third down. So I thought we did a really good job of containing Desmond Ridder and getting to him and sacking him and just making him uncomfortable, largely, on the day. Full credit there. No mental errors. Rally to the ball and tackle was the next key. I thought last week we saw a lethargic effort on defense. Not enough guys rallying to the football on both sides. Logan Thomas has a fumble in the second half against the Bears, and Terry McLaurin said after the game, we were loafing around, and if guys like myself were running to the football, maybe we could have helped Logan out. Maybe one of us could have recovered the fumble instead of 4 Bears standing there. And I made that comment after the game. Like, nobody was there except for Diami, I think, but nobody was trying to help. Everybody was just standing and watching, and that was the theme of the game against the Bears last Thursday. It just wasn't any energy. And we didn't tackle well. It was the worst exhibition of tackling I'd seen from this team in quite some time because that's not something that we usually have an issue with. But last week it was bad, and you couldn't have those same things crop up against this Falcons team that have playmakers that can really hurt you after the catch or after contact if you don't get them on the ground. And so, and then with a young secondary, particularly putting Percival Butler and Quan Martin out there, Danny Johnson being thrown into the fire as well, mixing around some parts. We needed to make sure that there weren't any mental lapses out on the field and easy big plays given up. There was one opportunity. Percy Butler didn't get out of his back pedal fast enough. Van Jefferson did get behind the defense. Luckily enough for us, Desmond Ridder did not connect. We didn't have any more of those issues the remainder of the game, however, and so this was a full point as well. Really good exhibition of tackling this week, rallying to the ball, and there were really no mental errors, which we were able to see. And now we may go back and watch film and say, man, they busted coverage here and there, and a guy was open, and Ridder either didn't have time to expose it or he just didn't, get them the football. So either way, full point there. And then finally, the last defensive key to victory was win on third down and at least one takeaway. I was being modest. I just wanted one. We don't get any, it seems like, on a weekly basis. So I was just asking for one. The defense tripled that asking and gave us 3. And they were all huge and critical to the success of the victory. The third down defense was pretty much what we needed, 5 of 15 for the Falcons. So, no complaints there. And kind of got back on track in that department because the last 2 weeks against the Eagles, well, the Eagles didn't really, scorch us on third downs, but the Bears did, most certainly. So it was good and the Bills did as well. So the last 2 out of 3 weeks prior to this game, we had struggled on third downs, got kind of back on track there. Good to see that. And then obviously the turnovers were a welcome sight. They were a sight for sore eyes. So obviously a full point there. And when you total it all up, I mean, you're not going to lose many games when you get a 7.5 out of 8. Right? That's the highest I think I've ever seen it. Like, that's the definition of a 3-phase win. Complementary football at its not finest, but at its true form. That's what it's supposed to look like to a degree. Again, if the offense had done more, we're talking about a 38-16 victory, and you're feeling probably a little bit different about this game for some of you who, don't love the way that they won. I would categorize this as an ugly win, absolutely, but those count too. Keep in mind, ugly is an adjective to describe something. The word that comes after the adjective is the most important part. It's ugly, but it's a win, okay? Right? The win is the most important part. You don't want to feel like you felt last week because we used that same adjective to describe something else, which was a loss. So again, I feel really good. Can't speak for you, but I feel really good about that. And now you learn from the mistakes, you build off of what you just done, and hopefully parlay that into another victory against another team that before the schedule came out, we thought we'd have a chance to beat. Now looking at how they've played this season and their record, you should have a chance to beat, but we said the same thing about the Bears last week, and we see how that turned out. We know the history of the Giants against us. We know the history at the Meadowlands and how we've struggled there for years. So none of that needs to be disregarded, and all of that has to be taken into account as we turn the page to the Giants. We'll do that as we get closer to Wednesday. Let's move on to in other news, where we heard from head coach Ron Rivera on his Victory Monday presser. We did collectively drag our asses across the finish line to get to 3-3. And literally this is the definition of collectively doing it because everybody played a part. I thought there were some guys that were some standouts. We'll discuss that on Dogs and Pups for the mob. And I got a couple of, guys that I really want to bring to your attention, that had impactful games. Probably don't get their name called a ton, but I think it's going to force them to make some decisions moving forward as to who's up and who's, not active on game days, because some guys got an opportunity, made the most of those opportunities, and you can't ignore it. And you may have to start looking at maybe making some changes, right? We'll see. But we'll talk about that on Dogs and Pups if you're a member of the MOBB or on Patreon. A couple of rosters, while we're talking about rosters movement, let's talk about this real quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but Washington brought back the defensive tackle that they had gotten from Atlanta. What is his name? Abdullah Anderson, who was, on the active roster due to some injuries earlier in the season, in order to make space for the two guys that they brought up. FA being the one that took Abdullah Anderson's spot, and Dejon Scooter Harris, they moved on from Abdullah Anderson and released him. They brought him back to the practice squad, and they moved on from William Bradley King. I just wanted to make mention of that because William Bradley King had been hanging around as a 7th-round pick from that 2021 draft. Remember, we had 3 7th-rounders, William Bradley King, Shaka Toney, and Dax Milne in that 2021 draft. He was hanging around. I think this might be it for William Bradley King, but we'll see. All it takes is 1 or 2 injuries, and he could be back on the practice squad. But I just wanted to make mention of that. Anyway, Let's get to the snap count. Then we'll talk about what Ron had to say, and then we'll get out of here. Okay? So let's take a look at the snap counts from week number 6 versus the Atlanta Falcons. We start on the offensive side of the ball. And as you can see, every game you're hoping to have 6 guys with 100% of the snaps. I wouldn't mind if Sam only had, 49 or 50 because they brought in Jacoby Brissett to quarterback sneak once or twice in a game. That wouldn't bother me. But clearly they're not interested in that. That's fine. But if that's going to be the case, not going to be the case rather, Sam should have 100% of the snaps, which he does. And you hope that the offensive line, the 5 guys that start the game, end the game, have all, 100% of the snaps. And that is the case this week. So Wiley, Lucas, Charles, Cosme, Howell, and Gates all played 51 snaps, which is 100%. Terry McLaurin, who was targeted 6 times in the first quarter, which is a career high for him, played 43 snaps, which is 84%. Jahan Dotson, and Ron was asked about Jahan, and rightfully so. I mean, it's getting out of hand now. 41 snaps. The man played 80% of the snaps and got 1 target in 41 plays. Make it make sense. Come on now. Y'all can say what y'all want, and some of y'all are just disgusting. I swear. Some of you guys, I just don't know. Like, how you go through life every day without being miserable. And maybe you are miserable and you like being miserable. But some of y'all are just, it's egregious how fickle some of you are. Like, it is amazing. 41 snaps for Jahan. He has to be targeted more. Has to. Logan Thomas, 40 snaps, 78% of the snaps. Curtis Samuel, 32 plays, 63% of the snaps. Brian Robinson Jr., 27 plays, 53% of the snaps. John Bates and Antonio Gibson both played 20 plays for 39% of the snaps. De'Ami Brown, 11 snaps, 22%. Cole Turner, 9 for 18% of the snaps. And Chris Rodriguez, 6 for 12% of the snaps. Now, the number that continues to jump out at me is Cole Turner, because he's the only athletic tight end that we have. And again, like I talk about on the defensive side of the football with Khaleke Hudson, why can't you have a package for Leak to get on the field? Why can't you have a Cole Turner package? It doesn't have to consist of 50 plays. Just 4 or 5 where you say, hey, we want to get Cole on the field, get him a touch or 2. He's athletic. Let's utilize his athleticism. It shouldn't take Bates or Thomas to not be in a lineup for Cole Turner to get opportunities. Again, that's the stuff that just bothers me. Because even in Kansas City, they would have packages for some of their second or third tight ends who were really athletic. They would make sure that those guys got targets in specific situations. I just don't understand why we can't do that here. Outside of that, I mean, nothing looks distorted or skewed this week. We just didn't have a lot of offensive snaps. I told you guys 2 or 3 weeks ago, anything in the 50s from an offensive standpoint, unless you've got explosives, like you got a bunch of 2 and 3 play drives that end in touchdowns, so you didn't have it a lot, or a bunch of short fields, which technically we did have some short fields, but that's not why we had 51 plays. We had 51 plays because we couldn't sustain offense in the second half. That's why we had 51 plays on offense. This is not good, by the way. As I told you 2-3 weeks ago, when we had another game with like 53 plays. Had to be, I don't think it was the Bills game. I don't think it was the Bills game that we had. It might have been the Bills game, though. That we had 53 plays or whatever. This is not enough. I'll just say that. This is not enough plays offensively, but it's a win. It's a win. Defensively, see how many plays we played defensively? Like, there's a huge discrepancy here. You don't want to see this. This is how you wear your players out. And we saw it. There was a point in the game, I think it was like mid to late stages of the fourth, the Falcons were pounding the ball down our throats because our offense wasn't sustaining itself in the second half. And this defense got tired and they started to run the football and they were having success. And literally everybody in the mob, to a man, said, our defense is getting tired. And you could see it. Those rush lanes that weren't there earlier in the game for the first 3 quarters, all of a sudden they were there. You play 83 snaps, you're gonna start to tire. So Percy Butler, Cam Curl. So you can see Percy Butler essentially took the default role of the defense, right? He stepped right in and he played all 83 plays. That would have been, Derek Forrest if he were healthy. So they had no issues with throwing Percival Butler in the fire, and that's a good sign that a guy you drafted in the 4th round was ready for 83 snaps and not coming off the field in this game. Cam Curl never comes off the field. I think he's played just about similar to Cody Barton. I think he might have played 100% of the snaps to this point of the season. Obviously, Barton on the field, they don't take him off the field either. St. Juice, Fuller both played 81 snaps. My guess is the 2 that they might have come off the field for would have been red zone snaps, where the Falcons went to extremely heavy personnel. So you take a corner off the field, and you take your corners off the field, and you put linebackers and defensive linemen on the field expecting run. That's my guess. Jamin Davis, 75% of the snaps. Chase Young, also 75% or 75 snaps for 90% of the snaps. So that's a lot of snaps for Chase Young. 90%. Deron Payne, 69 snaps, 83%. Again, still a large number for a large man. Same with Jonathan Allen, 69 snaps, 83%. Danny Johnson, 52 for 63%. John Ridgeway and Montez Sweat both had 33 snaps for 40%. Remember, Sweat missed a huge chunk of this game with a finger injury. We don't know the extent of that injury quite yet. We'll probably learn more on Wednesday, but unless it's really bad, and then we'll hear from one of the guys, insiders. So you're talking Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport. If we don't hear from them and we get it from Ron like we supposed to, then it's minor. If it's something serious, the likelihood is we'll hear from one of these dudes like Schefter or Ian Rappaport. So the hope is nothing serious, and we don't hear about it until Wednesday when we get to the injury report. James Smith-Williams, 32 snaps, 39%. F.A., I thought he looked good, man. F.A. was flying around. I saw 97 everywhere. 25 snaps, 30%. Casey Toohill, a very impactful and effective 18 snaps, 22% of the snaps in the game. And then Khaleke Hudson, 10 snaps, 12% of the snaps. This is the first time I think Leak has made his way onto the defensive snaps category. And he made the most of his opportunities, including a big 2-point conversion stop. I thought he was flying around as well. And let's expound upon that real quick before we get to what Ron had to say. And I want to also touch on the players that after the game as well. So I just want to make this clear because I know a lot of you are so excited about Khaleke getting on the field and you think this is the start of something moving forward that they're going to do. Don't get your hopes up. I'll just caution you with this. The Falcons are a unique team. They're one of the few teams in the league that make a concerted effort to run the football. It's what they do. They often line up in run-heavy formations or run formations and don't try to, deceive you. A lot of teams now will run out of 11 personnel, so it forces you to adjust and adapt to that. The Falcons will usually come out in either 12, 22, or some kind of personnel that screams, hey, we running this thing. So it allows you to put extra defensive linemen. So the Cinco package, which is why you saw Ridgeway with 33 snaps, 40% of the snaps in the game defensively, because they could do that because the Falcons declared to them, hey, we running this thing. And they didn't have to worry about play action fake or, being taken advantage of because you got a couple of big guys on the field versus some athletes on the back end. Same thing can go for Khaleke Hudson. They were able to play more 4-3, base 4-3, bring another outside backer onto the field. Again, a lot of you keep saying, put Khaleke in for Cody. He's not a middle linebacker. They don't view him in that light. He is an outside linebacker. So is Jamin Davis. So they were able to play more 4-3 because the Falcons run the football. So it allowed them, didn't have an extra receiver. There was no third receiver on the field. It's a lot of Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith on the field. That's 2 tight ends. So you're able to bring an extra linebacker on the field, or you're able to bring an extra defensive lineman on the field. Most weeks, you're not going to have teams who deploy a ton of 2 tight end sets and live in that. And the Bills did, which is why Jamin Davis had a huge snap count that week. And I think you saw a little bit more from the defensive line that week as well, because the Bills play a lot of 2 tight ends. They could have played Khaleke Hudson in that game, and they did in this game because the Falcons were a lot like the Bills in the sense that there were a lot of 2 tight end sets. That said, moving forward, you play teams that don't deploy a bunch of 2 tight end sets, that put 3 and 4 receivers on the field at a time, live in 11 personnel or greater. Probably not going to see a lot of Khaleke Hudson. So I just want to forewarn you, because a lot of you are thinking Khaleke played really well. I know they had to see it. He's got to get more opportunities. I hope that's the case, but I'm not banking on it with this staff. Okay? I'm not banking on it. So just wanted to bring that to your attention, because the likelihood is Khaleke's going back to the bench. Okay? That's all I'm going to say to you. All right? Anyway, heard from some of the players after the game. Before we move forward to what was said today, I want to go back and talk about what was said yesterday. Duran said, and I knew it had to be something like this, because he wasn't hurt until he went to, get into his stance. All of a sudden, he's writhing in pain. That's not how injuries work. You don't have a shoulder injury. You go in the huddle, you get the defensive call, you go to line up, and all of a sudden, you're rolling around writhing in pain. That's not how that shit happens. When something goes awry, you feel it immediately. So for him to be writhing in pain and get an offsides penalty because something happened, I knew it had to be something like he stuck his hand in the ground, and he said he literally went to put his hand in the ground and he dislocated his finger. It popped out of the socket. And that's why he was rolling around in pain. And so they went to commercial. They called a penalty on him first, which was bullshit. But it is what it is. He was offsides. And then while he was on the ground writhing around, he told them what happened. They popped it back into place. And then they came back from commercial break, and he's standing there like nothing's wrong on the sidelines, ready to go back in. And that's why, because he had dislocated his finger. That's crazy shit. And he was like, it hurt like hell. And when he was talking to the media, he was like, yeah, it still hurts like hell right now. I would imagine so, because your joints, aren't supposed to pop out of the socket. Those balls, aren't supposed to pop out of the socket. So I would imagine that it hurts like hell. So he talked about that. Benjamin St. Juice, I always love listening to Juice because he's one of those introspective dudes that speaks his mind on the team. Remember, he was one of the few guys that spoke out about Daniel Snyder last year. So he's not afraid to say how he feels. And he talked about the defense and saying, look, we were awful last week. We weren't doing our jobs. Guys were trying to, and he even had pointed himself out last week. He said, I got caught trying to do somebody else's job, and I didn't even do my job. And that's how I gave up a big third down early in the game to DJ Moore. So he was like, it's just about everybody doing their job. Don't try to do somebody else's job and you ain't even get your job done. And he said on the pick that he had in the end zone, I watched film. I knew what they were going to do. I saw them do it on film multiple times. I knew it was going to be something like a 7-stop, something quick. with something behind me in the end zone. So I was looking for it. I knew we were bringing pressure, so he was gonna have to get it out quick, and I was all over it. So you love to hear that, right? And he said, this is good. We like what we did, but we got a lot of shit to clean up, and we got to continue to do the little things right. We got to continue to be where we supposed to be when we supposed to be there, and when those plays are there for us to make, we got to make them. Facts. Um, we heard from Kendall Fuller. He talked about his interception. He talked about the defense. He talked about Casey Toohill. I know you guys saw the victory speech in the locker room after the game. He gave the game ball. Kendall had a beautiful speech for Coach V. They call him Vies, Brent Vesselmeyer, or Wieselmeyer. That's the defensive backs coach. He coaches the DBs. He was the safeties coach last year, got promoted to the defensive backs coach this year to take over for Chris Harris. He lost his father, and Kendall Fuller gave the game ball to him. And the secondary definitely stepped up for Vies in the game with 2 interceptions, 2 huge plays, obviously. And he got a little emotional, and he broke the team down. So that was good to see. And then he talked about Casey Toohill and guys just, the depth on this team and guys stepping up when their numbers called. Jamin Davis spoke, and, he was happy. I'm happy for Jamin. He's been through a lot, off the field, on the field. And it was good to see him make a play like that. And hopefully that continues. I said this early in the season. It was very apparent after the first 2 weeks. This version of Jamin Davis is what we've been waiting on. This is the best Jamin Davis we've seen since he's been drafted. And I always try to tell you guys, everyone's so quick. A lot of you are so quick to use the B word on players. You don't want to give them a chance to develop. Everybody don't come in the league ready to be a contributor right away. Not everybody's built like that. Some guys need time. Some guys are going to turn out to be busts, right? They are going to turn out to be the B word. But you got to give them a chance. You can't just cast somebody as a B word as soon as they step in the league and don't get it done first 3-4 weeks of the season. That's crazy. Or first 2 years in the league. Some guys are late bloomers. Jamin Davis, it took him a while. They put so much on his plate the first year. Then he had to adjust. And then, he was just getting into a rhythm. And now you got somebody else next to him. And I think he's really settling it now. He really seems to have gotten, what's being asked of him. And he's playing fast and at a very high level. And so it's good to see, a lot of his work paying off. Hopefully it continues as the season progresses. We heard from Sam. Obviously, he felt like he did some good things, but also feels like he can improve in some areas. You could tell that nobody wanted to throw Jahan under the bus because everybody knew he should have caught that ball, and that probably would have been a touchdown. And, Ron danced around it today and yesterday, and Sam danced around it last night. You choose your words carefully. When you're a leader, as Sam and Ron are, you have to make sure that you got everybody's back. You can't throw anybody under the bus. It's got to be me, I can't be, or us. It can't be he or they or fill in the blank, using somebody's name. So, Sam took culpability for the sacks. He's like, the offensive line was really good today. I got to do a better job. And he was right. Like, there were times where it just wasn't anywhere to go. And the Falcons and I told you guys this after the game, the Falcons did a really good job of taking away the checkdowns. Like, they were on them shits. When the Falcons, which they pretty much did in the second half. First half, for whatever reason, they were playing zone and giving us opportunities. When they went to man against us, they shut us down. Like, there was nowhere for Sam to go with the football. And there was nowhere for him to escape. And he's got to learn, all right, just chuck it over somebody's head. Right? They're in the vicinity. Get out of the pocket. If you can get out, if you can't, throw it in their vicinity. They're not going to call you for intentional grounding, right? But he talked about getting Jahan involved. And this is why I love Sam, because he's very aware. He understands. He didn't need time to go look at the film or, he said, we're going to get Jahan and Curtis and more involved. Curtis only had 4 touches. Now, he had 4 targets. He caught all 4, including an incredible catch on the first possession of the game. I still don't know how the hell he caught that shit. And then, of course, the touchdown. And he had the little, they count this as a catch, not a run, the little tap pass he had after the Jamison Crowder return, getting it down to like the 1 yard line, and that set up the Antonio Gibson touchdown. So Curtis was involved early, but just not often. So he acknowledged we got to get Dotson and Kirkcole more involved. So he knows, and I think he went out of his way. He made a concerted effort to try to get Terry involved. I think that was his doing, those targets to Terry early in the game. Because even when Terry was double covered and he knew this was no chance, he still threw it to Terry anyway. He knew it was going to be incomplete, but if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down with it going towards Terry, right? So I think you're going to see a concerted. I feel like this week against the Giants, there's going to be a concerted effort to get one involved. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't touch it 2 or 3 times relatively early in the game, once or twice on the first possession, another time or 2 in his direction on the second possession. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets the Terry treatment next week and he's got 4 or 5 targets in the first quarter. I wouldn't be shocked. And again, if you want everybody to get involved, have more offensive snaps. Can't have 51 snaps and then complain about guys not getting targeted. You don't have the ball enough. Because if Terry's got 9 or 10 targets and you only got 51 plays, that's a fifth of your plays. You're still going to run the ball. We ran the ball 20-something times. That's 32 plays right there. If you're targeting Terry 10 times and you run it 22 times and you only got 51 plays, it's only 19 more snaps to go around. So, again, if you want guys to get targets, we got to convert on third downs. We got to possess the ball more. Anyway, Sam, that's my guy, man. I just love the accountability, and, he's getting better. He was really good in that first half. I went back and watched because I think the second half kind of distorts how he played. He was really good in this game. And a lot of the fans won't watch the film, so they won't be privy to this. But I could see this live. I don't even need the film for this. I know the film is going to confirm what I already feel like I watched with the TV copy. Sam he didn't make any mistakes. And a lot of people keep complaining about the sacks, and we don't want to see them. I'd rather a sack than a pick. And I'm telling you, when we go back and watch, because I watched the TV copy, and I can tell guys aren't open. But when I go back and watch the film, I'm pretty sure we're going to see guys weren't really open against Atlanta's man coverage for the most part. And so what the hell do you want Sam? Do you want him to force it and throw a pick? Some shit gets tipped in the air and it gets picked off, and then now you bitching that Sam's turning it over? I'd rather him take a sack than that. So he'll continue to get better. I like where he's trending. I like the trajectory of what I'm seeing from Sam Howell. We heard from Ron today, and again, he was non-committal on more playing time for guys like Danny Johnson and Khaleke Hudson, which he should be. I mean, he has no reason to tell anybody what he's planning on doing or not doing. I would hope that they recognize guys like that, and I'd even extend it to guys like Terrell Burgess and Castro Fields, who was pulled up and had tremendous days on special teams. I'd hope that he recognized some of the impacts of what guys were able to do. And, this is where being a coach is important, is you got to go to your coordinators and say, hey, we got to find more snaps for X, Y, and Z. You would hope that your coordinators would figure that out on their own, and the coaches would be lobbying for that. But again, I don't know the inner workings of an NFL coaching staff and how that works. I just would assume that positional coaches would be lobbying to the coordinators, hey, we got to get more targets for Jahan Dotson as a receivers coach. Or you go, hey, man, we should get Cole Turner on the field a little bit more. Or, look, guy, Khaleke Hudson's energy is infectious. I think he needs more snaps. But again, I don't know how any of that works. The biggest thing that Ron said to me during the presser, and he wanted, one of his overarching themes was, we just want to keep this one game at a time, do your job mentality. Like, not really wanting to focus so much on past years and slow starts and digging yourself a hole and, getting hot at, whatever. Let's just one at a time. You just beat the Falcons. You got back to 500. You got a chance to get over 500 with the win against the Giants. Let's just focus on that. Let's just focus on the Giants. See what we get done there, and then we'll talk about the Eagles after that. Like, let's not try to go big picture. We don't seem to do well when we do that. So let's just narrow the focus and just take it at a one game at a time approach. Everybody do your job for this next game, and then we'll go from there. And he talked about, what I just talked about essentially with the packages and how you were able to play Ridgeway a little bit more and go to that Cinco package because the Falcons pretty much give you the opportunity to not have to worry about play action fake or, putting 3 or 4 receivers on the field. They make it easy on you. They allow you to put heavier personnel on the field defensively because they're going to try to run the football. That's who they are. That's a part of their DNA and their identity. They're kind of a throwback in that regard. You don't see a lot of teams in the NFL operate in that space anymore. So you can't be assured that you're going to see a lot of those guys playing as many snaps, and that's why it's a week-to-week league. Every week is game plan specific. Things change. So we'll see what happens next week. So he was pretty adamant about that. But the biggest thing he said to me that stood out to me was Jahan. Like, we're going to get him the ball. It's only a matter of time. And this is what you have to understand. You'd be a damn fool to think that Ron's going to allow his first round pick from last year to struggle. His first round pick from this year is already struggling. Do you really think he's going to allow you to start talking shit about his first round pick from last year? You're right. So I'm telling you, every time Ron comes out publicly and says something like he did today about Jahan, he did it last year when it came to J.D. McKissick after the first game of the season when we were bitching, where's J.D. McKissick at? I think it might have been week 2 we were bitching, and then J.D. had like 8 targets and like 13 touches. I think, and he did the same thing with Terry last year. And then Terry had, I think it might have been before the Colts game, if I'm not mistaken. I think it might have been the Colts game. I'm not sure. Before the Colts game, rather. I don't think it was because Terry had a really good game against Green Bay before the Colts game. It might have been before the Bears game. Because it had to be, because that was before the Bears game. So whoever we played before the Bears, probably the Titans. Terry didn't have a lot of targets in that game, a lot of touches. We were getting pissed off because it was like a trend early in the season that year. And then they started creating ways. Jet sweeps. I remember Terry had like 2 jet sweeps in that game, fumbled one of them, and somehow miraculously recovered it. They threw him slants. We hadn't seen a Terry slant in like 2 years. They were throwing slants to Terry. I think you're going to see that kind of game from Jahan against the Giants. That's my guess. But Ron was like, no, we going to get him involved. It's only a matter of time. And then Ron had the audacity to pull the posse out. Like, when they had Art Monk and Ricky Sanders and Gary Clark, and I'm like, Really, Ron? Like, you went there, bro? Okay. I know. I see what you were doing there. I see what you were doing there. Anyway, I'm not worried about Jahan. Some of y'all are overreacting. I mean, some of the takes on Jahan, I mean, again, some of you guys probably live some miserable existences. We could never be friends with how some of y'all conduct yourselves. If this how y'all acting over one drop pass. And look, he's dropped passes in the past. He dropped the pass against Philadelphia in week 3 or 4. He dropped passes last year, you know, and we swept it on the rug because he made plays. But he had drops last year too. I'm not worried about Jahan Dotson. You know what I am worried about? Lack of targets and opportunities. That's what I'm worried about. Now, if we throw him the ball 7 times and he drops 4 of them, now we got an issue. You can't throw the man the ball once, he drops it, and now he's trash. He can't catch, you know, he's a bust. I mean, I've seen all, and a lot of these dudes are trolls out here. A lot of these people are trolls. I don't really, that stuff doesn't bother me, but it's the people that I talk to on a regular basis that are succumbing to some of this foolishness and starting to talk crazy. Because there's going to be the same ones where he make a big play or he has 7 catches for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. Man, Jahan is him. Nah, you weren't saying that 2 weeks ago, man. You calling him all kinds of names and talking about we need to have a discussion about Jahan. No, we don't. If we having a discussion about Jahan is how do we get him more involved? That's the discussion we need to have. So, anyway, I digress. That's pretty much it. I got nothing else for you. Feels good to get back in the winning column. Cowboys are on tonight. We'll go around the NFC East tomorrow after the Cowboys game meets its conclusion. Eagles lost, obviously, so that's a plus because it felt like the division was starting to get away from us. In particular, I'm not really worried about anybody else. It was getting away from us. But what a difference a week makes. Eagles lose, we win. You gain a full game on them. And they got the Dolphins coming up. Not saying that the Dolphins are going to beat them. But this is the first time this season that they won't be, you know, dominant favorites. If a favorite at all. You know, I think they'll be favorites at home. But it won't be big, you know. And I could easily see them losing this game. And again, if we take care of business against the Giants at the 1 o'clock hour, just like we had a chance this past week to sit back and watch an NFC East team play on Sunday night and potentially lose, we may have that opportunity again. And then all of a sudden, you know, pending what Dallas does over the next 2 weeks, we beat the Giants. They lose to the Dolphins. Week 7's matchup, or 8, could be for first place in the division. We had that opportunity in week 4 and we blew it. We may have that opportunity come back around. Again, long ways away from that. I'm not focusing in on that. I'm focusing in on the Giants because if we don't take care of business against the Giants, all of that shit is rendered irrelevant anyway. I do know this, though. Celebrate! It's Victory Monday, man. We collectively drug our asses across the finish line. And for that, I feel good. Feels good. Anyway, y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to chopping it up with y'all on Tuesday. Until then, and look, I know a lot of y'all will be watching that game tonight. You know where I'm going to be when it's done. Come kick it with the kid. Anyway. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys tomorrow. God bless. Take care.
Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone.